Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dr. Dawson, and today we are going to kind of have a little bit of a conversation about a video that Dr. Jones, Veterinary Secrets, that's the YouTube channel, and I will link the video down in the description below. We're going to have a little conversation about a video that he posted here about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, something like that. And it is really about the veterinary care credit cards, so things like care credit, and talking about their interest rates and some of those things, as well as corporate veterinary practice. And so some of the things that I see coming, and maybe I'll make some predictions about the future. In 10 years from now, you can fact check me and see if I was close, right, or completely off the wall. As usual, welcome back, and let's get started.
You're still paying. How pets became big business. Heather Massey brought her 9-year-old dog to the veterinarian when he started having seizures. She was told the workup, the diagnostic test, potential treatment is going to be really expensive. She didn't have the funds. But fear not, said the veterinary clinic. We can get you a credit card, a care credit card. You can fund this diagnostic workup. Unfortunately, her dog had a tumor soon after he died. But 6 years later, she's still paying off that credit card. A good old care credit, who say they're making it really easy for pet parents to fund and treat their pets. They have a 30% interest rate. 30%.
Yes, they do have a 30% or whatever it is now. It changes pretty frequently. However, the thing that I will say and mention is that there is a period of time, depending on the size of the purchase, that generally there's no interest. So it's usually 6 or 12 months. So my advice, if you are going to use these cards, and there can definitely be a place for them, I am not an advocate for using them, but some people need the ability to put it on credit and pay it off slowly, a little bit over time. A lot of clinics no longer will do payment plans, and the reason is that so many of them have just been burned. I know of debts in some of our practice that we sent through collections, and you know, some of the debts for some of these things were quite high, in the multiple thousands of dollars, and we never got a penny. So payment plans, yeah, most clinics aren't going to do it because of that, unless they know you really well, and even then they might just say, nope, we never do. These credit cards, like Care Credit, All Pet, I think is another similar one, Scratch Pay, some of those. The advantage is that you usually can get approved even with not great credit, and you can often have a period of time where there's no interest. Make sure that the money on there is something you can pay off in a fairly short period of time. Don't go over that. They are a trap in that sense. And you will be paying on it forever because that interest rate is insane. I also think you shouldn't be paying interest on regular credit cards. And if you have questions about that, go talk to Dave Ramsey. But yeah, that... I'm not completely against credit cards like he maybe is, but you just have to be careful.
To do it, but she really loved her pet and she wanted to do what she could. And unfortunately, her experience with her pet is typical what many people are also experiencing with their pets. For years, it was the single practice, really small veterinary clinic. Vets, they ran their own shop, kind of like I did. And we did a bit of everything, did it all. We saw little puppies, we saw little kittens, we dewormed them. Yes, we vaccinated them. We got them on with life. We spayed them, we neutered them. If legs were broken, stomachs were twisted, we did the surgery in our practices. When animals got older, they became seriously ill, we discussed the options with clients in terms of, yes, we can do some bigger diagnostics here. Here's what it's going to cost. Is this something you can afford or not? You were dealing with your 1 or 2 veterinarian, your small practice, and you were someone who saw a little puppy and a little kitten come in all the way through to the end of that pet's life. And that was my experience in veterinary practice, owning a clinic.
Yeah, this is very much like my day practice. It's becoming more and more rare, unfortunately. And we'll get into maybe some of the reasons why I think that is. But we're really struggling in the veterinary industry to have small owned private practices. The difficulty in the younger generation like me is definitely student loans. Being able to purchase or start a practice, the risk is just not worth it. When you have how many hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans, it's a much safer option with your family to be able to go and to be a part of an established practice, make a fairly good paycheck, and not take those risks. It also might be bad for the industry, and I don't have a good fix for it, but I do have some reasons why it might be happening.
It must sound like I'm kind of old here, like the good old days. But honestly, that was just a little over 10 years ago. Wasn't actually that long ago. But so much has changed.
Yeah, and I will say that the bigger cities you go to, a lot of the places will be more like that, where they're going to, for anything out of the ordinary, anything that's not basically wellnesses or super easy things, some places are going to refer you to some sort of specialty practice, which is not always the best thing. They may be able to provide more specialized care, which is good, but they're often really, really expensive. And I will say maybe some of them are more profit driven.
As we people humans become more attached to our pets, got the very same experience, we are much more willing to spend so much more. So as soon as you're willing to open your wallet, start pulling out those multiple dollar bills, big business, they get involved. Those guys are happy to take your money. Veterinary care has gone from relatively low tech, high touch to high tech. You know, we're talking some clinics with MRI machines, 24-hour intensive care. We have specialists now in cardiology, neurology, oncology, etc.
Yeah, I mean, some of these things are insanely priced. An MRI machine, last time I looked, was over $1 million, and you're looking at, usually maintenance, you're looking at $100,000 a year, was the last time I had looked into it. It's not a cheap thing to have an MRI. A CT machine is a little bit cheaper, but still the parts can be incredibly expensive. In our practice, we actually have a CT machine, and we're only 2 doctors, but that's a different story for a different day. I love our CT machine. I dislike having to practice without it because it gives so many benefits. But the specialists, they do go through a lot more schooling, or I shouldn't say schooling, training would be a better word. It's not usually a specific school. Generally, what they're going to do is go do a internship or a couple internships, depending on the specialty, and they're going to do just kind of a general rotating internship oftentimes where they're going to go through all the different specialties. Then they're going to try to get into a residency. And a residency is training under somebody who's already specialized. You do 3, or I should say maybe 2 to 5 years, depending on the exact specialty and all of that stuff. And then you're going to have to take boards to become board certified in that specialty. So not just your general veterinary boards, but also in the specialty.
In fact, veterinary fees, they have soared over 60% in the past decade, just in 10 years.
Yeah, they have definitely gone up a lot, but so has just the cost of life. Inflation, man. I know we're all sick of hearing it, but it's inflation.
Thousands of veterinary clinics across North America, they've been bought up by private corporations, large equity firms. In the US, they say this is very similar to what happened with doctors' offices. Now the bulk of these doctors' offices, they're owned by large corporations. These corporate practice managers, they're saying, we've got to make this a profit center, i.e. make a whole lot more of this. Vets being paid on commission, see more pets, order more tests, upsell things like more dentals, etc. And it's not just me saying that. This is veterinarians across the country saying the exact same thing. And the result, they say, for so many pet owners is just an unsustainable situation. Most people don't have pet insurance.
Yeah, completely agree. This is the way it is. I know of a lot of practices that have been bought by corporate or are going to be bought by corporate. It just is a really unfortunate situation because a lot of these practice owners have no one to buy the practice, and these corporations come along and they offer huge sums of money that they would never be able to get from a private business sale. And what are they supposed to do? A lot of these older vets don't have a ton set aside for retirement because we're vets. We're not financial geniuses generally. We're not necessarily, there are good business owners that are vets, but a lot of us are trained to be doctors. We're not trained to be business owners. And so we thrive in doing veterinary care, less so with business. And so that is really unfortunate. It is the truth. I think that we're going to see more and more of these practices being bought up by corporations, and the prices that are going to happen in the veterinary industry are going to continue to go up in general across the world, but especially in the U.S.
And they're accumulating huge bills, huge debt, huge interest. They gave the example of Claire Kirsch. She was a veterinary tech in 2015. She was earning $10 an hour.
It is really hard to be a vet tech. We'll just say that. That's a whole different video.
Hired serious veterinary care to the extent of $13,000.
That's not unreasonable or it is unreasonable. It's not unrealistic for a lot of horse things. And for performance horses, that is entirely worth it, and it makes a lot of sense. For pets, it's really hard to sometimes justify that. But show and performance horses sometimes are worth in the $40,000 to $50,000 range. So equine practice is a weird place, and I'm not going to get into that too much. But it's a strange place that I try to avoid as much as I can.
She had no way to pay for that, earning $10 an hour. She had to max out high-interest credit cards just to pay for the veterinary bill in her own clinic. Mm-hmm. These large corporations, they're seeing you shelling out a bunch of money. They're seeing profit. Let's get into this business model. The Mars Company, aka of Mars Bars, they paid over $9 billion, that's billion with a B, for VCA animal hospitals. Several veterinarians who worked in corporate practices, they also spoke to the New York Times.
They also own a lot of the Blue Pearls. They also own Banfield, and I think there's a couple other veterinary brands that they actually own. Let me check into that quick. So it looks like they own Banfield. They own several practices, large corporations that are over in Europe and in the UK / Ireland, as well as Singapore. Yeah, they are. They also own several different lab companies like Antech, which is one of the major things, one of the major lab tech things. They also have a whole bunch of pet nutrition companies, companies like Crave, Caesars, Imes, Royal Canin. I didn't know they were bought by them. That's unfortunate. Didn't know they were bought by them. Pedigree. And so many more. Yeah, they own the Wisdom Panel. They are buying up the veterinary world. Mars is probably the biggest company that owns so many of these things, and it's kind of crazy actually.
One vet from California said she quit her job when she was told her ACT, her average client transaction, it was too low. She's not charging enough per client. She quit. Another veterinarian from Virginia, she was said that she needed to see 21 clients a day or else.
21 clients a day is a lot. I think the most that I've ever seen was like 28. And I worked a 12-hour day. It was more than a 12-hour day probably by the time all the paperwork and charting was done. Yeah, 21 a day. I mean, if you're only doing like wellness things, that's reasonable. But if you add any medical stuff in, there's no way you can make an accurate diagnosis, do diagnostics, unless you have a huge support team. And you're talking about spending 4 minutes with the client. Good luck telling a client that their dog has diabetes and explain that to them in 4 minutes. It's just not practical.
Third veterinarian from Colorado said they overheard the practice manager say, many vets, they need coaching on how to get clients to say yes. Like yes to those more expensive diagnostic tests, those wellness plans, those dentals, etc., etc. These veterinarians, they're working in corporate practices. They felt the pressure to drive more business.
There are definitely practices where that's a thing. There also is some truth to getting people to say yes in the right situations where that actually is valuable to them and it will save them money in the long run. So one example would be actually doing one of the things he mentioned, doing dentals. If you can do a dental on your dog or your cat before you get severe dental disease in a dog that's predisposed to it especially, you will end up saving money in the long run. Because if you allow that dog to get severe dental disease, you're drastically increasing your risk of kidney disease, which isn't cheap to treat. You're increasing your risk of diabetes. You're increasing your risk of heart disease. None of those are inexpensive to treat. And you're much more likely to have extractions, which are much more expensive than a simple cleaning. So there are those situations where getting them to say yes in the right situation is important, because it will save them money in the long run. Obviously, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. Don't go and ruin your life for your pet, as hard as that is to say. It's just not reasonable, because you won't be able to take care of them when they actually need it.
They felt the pressure to drive more business. They didn't want to give their name to the New York Times for fear of retribution, future job prospects, etc.
Yeah.
But there are many veterinarians who work in corporate practice, and they claim that the corporation has no influence on how the care options they choose for pets. Yet Dr. Andrew Federer, he's a medical director of a corporate practice in Ohio. He says that when you see veterinarians paid on commission, especially these young vets starting out, they have these huge student loans. How could that pressure not affect them? I mean, yes, if you see little Tula here and you just do an exam and you charge $146, But if you also say, look at the tartar on her teeth. Look at those gums. There's so much gingivitis. Imagine if that tartar got into her blood system, it spread to her heart, she got heart disease. Sir, you're going to need to get a dental done on this dog really quick. $1,000 dental, a 30% commission. How could that not influence so many people?
30% commission is a little unrealistic, at least in my world. But there is some truth to the pressure, especially if you are working on commission, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because it does benefit those that sometimes see more cases and are willing to do more complicated things. However, the student loan debt is a huge pressure. I know people who are graduating with $300,000, $400,000 in student loans, and most of those are going to be a 7-8% interest rate. You're looking at never paying them off in your lifetime, and that is a crushing weight, and it's no wonder that people go to places, and vets are wanting to go to places where they're going to get paid more, because they might be able to pay that off one day. Especially young vets. And how many young vets are going to want to take the risk of, hey, I'm going to buy this practice, which goes back to the corporations buying everything out, when they have $300,000 in student loans? It's a tragic state of the veterinary world, and it's so hard to compete with corporate as far as hiring good talent and good support staff and good veterinarians, because they can afford to pay so much more because they charge so much more.
Influence so many people. And pet insurance is not necessarily the answer. I mean, they gave
Absolutely
an example,
not the
only about
answer.
4% of people have pet insurance, 4% of pet owners. And at the same time, these companies, they can change their terms. Yes, they may be covering you. They won't cover pre-existing conditions. It's going to cost a lot more if you're going to have insurance for an older pet. And they gave the example of someone who had pet insurance for their animal. The insurance company, they decided, no, we're changing the terms. Stephanie Berger of Michigan, she had insurance with Nationwide. And they told her at the end of her term in August, they were no longer going to be covering her. Her cat was getting chemotherapy every other month, costing $8,000 for each treatment. Said, sorry, you're out of luck. Okay, and don't get me going on insurance companies.
I entirely agree with him. I'm deathly afraid that the veterinary world is going to go to insurance. Oh, the nightmare of insurance. Let me tell you this. I understand why you might do it. I understand 100% why you might choose pet insurance on your animal, especially with the costs the way that they are. But when we transition to pet insurance, the insanity that is going to go along with that, the absolute insanity. Prices are going to jump through the roof. We're going to see insurance companies, like in the human world, dictating what medicine can be practiced and calling it, coverage things, as part of their terms. They'll cover this only if you've done that. this medication versus that. It is gearing up to be just like the human world, which is stupid, especially here in the US. The human medical world, don't even get me started on that, being owned by basically 2 or 3 large corporations that tell doctors how to do their job, and they limit patients on care and make patient care worse, all in the name of being able to afford it. Because in the human world, hospitals, 30% of their staff, or huge percentages of their staff, are support staff, basically just to deal with insurance and billing and those types of things, instead of actual medical care providers, which are the ones that are the most important. So the insurance companies having to deal with them is causing these hospitals to have to charge more so that they can afford all these people to deal with the insurance companies. And I dread the light that in my life, and it will happen in my lifetime. It's going to become that bad unless something changes, and I don't foresee that happening at this point.
Many veterinarians, they offer specialty credit cards like Care Credit. But the problem, they have these huge interest rates, and they gave the same example of how the same thing has happened within human medicine within the United States. That so many people just driven in this debilitating debt. Like this 30% interest rate, that is not reasonable.
Yeah, the 30% interest rate is absolutely not reasonable. However, it's not something that's unheard of historically. It's just unheard of in recent times. 30% interest rates were not considered anything outrageous, in the last 100 years. That was considered fairly normal during different times of our history. But it is debilitating and crippling, especially on huge amounts of money. So just be really, really, really careful. I can't emphasize this enough. Be careful if you're going to go into debt for your pet. Because if you have another dog, if you have 2 other dogs, if you have a dog and a cat, whatever it is, if you're going to debt for one, you're going to have a harder time taking care of your other pets. And that's really hard to say. But be careful.
We adopted a new dog, Luna Bear. But unfortunately, Luna Bear, she has severe allergies. And Heather, she has to spend hundreds of dollars in managing her dog's allergies.
Allergies are annoying because the things that actually work are so expensive for some of these dogs. That's another video.
As much of it still goes on this high interest credit card, but she says like her dog's worth it. She pays her veterinary bills first, then she buys food. I really feel for so many people being in this situation. I just think like so many people can really benefit from their pets for support, and just not having the funds to just provide basic care. That's just so hard. Then you go into a corporate practice, here's someone being paid on commission. Of course they're going to want to charge you more, upsell you, etc. To me, that just doesn't seem right.
Not every doctor will. There will be those that do that. Don't hate on those that are being paid on commission, because most places aren't going to pay a salary that's livable when you've got $250,000, $300,000 in student loans and a house and a family. Most places aren't going to pay that. I think when I graduated vet school, which was 5 years ago, oh my goodness, it's so long. It feels like yesterday. The average was $75,000 a year, which may sound like a lot of money to some of you, and it is. But when you're paying $2,000 a month towards student loans, it's not livable. That's not something you can do if you have anywhere to live, because by the end of the year, you're paying $30,000 in student loans, maybe $24,000 in student loans. Plus, then you're also talking about having living expenses, paying taxes because the government says you make too much money to qualify for student loan credits. Vets need to be paid so that they can continue to work and continue to graduate and have it actually make sense to become a vet.
And if you're in that situation, I hope you can use some of the remedies that are on our channel. Like first, obviously go see your veterinarian. Your dog, your cat is seriously sick. Get an accurate diagnosis, at the very least, a basic veterinary exam, but then consider the array of the different home remedies as far as options.
Yeah, I am not going to go into too much about the home remedies. You got to be careful with some of them. Some of them may just be benign where they don't cause any issues. Some of them may actually cause more problems. I'm not an expert. I'm not dragging on him. If you can't afford anything, some of these things might be better than nothing. And you do what you can do. And in one of my soon-to-be future videos, I'm going to talk about euthanasia and end of life and how to know when it's time. And this is actually going to come up some in that video.
And just really ask many, many questions to your veterinarian about, what do you think my dog has? What do you think my cat has? Do we need to do this diagnostic test or not? Yet, if we don't do this test, is it going to change treatment? Maybe it's not. Is there an alternative solution? Thanks for watching. Stay away from these high-interest veterinary care credit cards if you can. And I don't think any credit card company should be able to have 30% interest.
If you're going to use one of these, pay it off. Don't let it sit there and accrue interest. Please, please, please don't do that. If you can't afford to pay it, don't get it. Don't use it. I know you love your dog and I know you love your cat, but this will make it harder for you to take care of them in the future. All right, I think that was a good video. I actually agree with a lot of what he has to say in this video, and I hope this was enlightening or entertaining, and we'll see how long it is in post-production. But you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and we will see you in the next video.
Myself